You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WYBC. We are currently following the situation in the Middle East as closely as possible because even the updates that I had rolling into the last writing phase of the show at about 6:30 p.m., almost all of them are already out of date. That is because right now, the USS Lincoln, the Abraham Lincoln Strike Group, that is supposed to be in the South China Sea at the moment, has now been retasked. It is currently en route to the Middle East into U.S. Central Command. That means that the admirals in charge are changing out, and the USS Abraham Lincoln may be getting there after the strike on Iran has taken place by the United States, perhaps coalition forces. On the civilian side of things, flight radar is looking pretty barren right now. And I do mean it's pretty empty. There are perhaps one, maybe two flights right now over Iran that appear to be from either Qatar or from Turkey, although Qatar has now also ordered all of its flights to abstain from entering Iranian airspace. So right now, right off the top of the bat, let's give you a few of the air closures and warnings. The reason that we can say right now that things are reaching a rather more intensive front is based on the number of warnings and embassy evacuations, which have come from not just Western nations, but also second and third world countries as well. The United States, of course, has sent multiple alerts. Canada has urged all citizens to leave Iran now if safe. Germany has urged all residents to leave. Australia has advised all citizens to leave and said, if you stay, you're on your own. It's a very Australian thing to say. Sweden, the foreign ministry, has upgraded its advisory to the highest level yesterday on the 13th, has now stated no Swedish-based flights may enter any Iranian airspace. The United Kingdom has evacuated its embassy in Tehran and has withdrawn all of its staff, although it is suggesting they are continuing operations remotely. France has reduced non-essential embassy staff and as a precaution has surrendered. Sorry, I can't help, just a little joke in there at the French. Spain has advised all citizens to leave immediately using all available routes. Italy has strongly renewed its appeal for citizens to leave due to security situations. India, Poland, New Zealand, Japan, Ireland, Taiwan, Singapore, China, interestingly enough, Finland and Belgium have advised citizens to leave Iran immediately. Now, on the ground in Iran, we have a couple of updates regarding what people are hearing and reporting. First of all, Tehran, the actual Iranian Islamic regime, has closed its airspace for 2 hours. 2 hours. An interesting closure of airspace. Also, the office of El Khamenei has officially requested that the United States stay out of its airspace. So, some nice diplomatic updates there. Always appreciate Oregon's Coach Lanning asking Curt Cignetti to stay out of his end zone. Stellar stuff on that side of things. We do have reports, and I should say more than just rumors. Confirmed reports of the sounds of fighter jets. They do have a different sound register than just transportation, passenger jets. Over the Iranian western border, the Iraq eastern border. Here's what that sounded like. You can see a very, very thin light, which appears to be a jet kicking it into high gear. Someone has asked, hey, is that the jet kicking on afterburners? No, that's not what that looks like. But it does appear fighter jets are mobilized in the air in the region. Now, according to a couple of sources, the 3 missile-guided cruisers that the United States has in the Persian Gulf are arrayed in a manner suggesting potential air defense against counter strikes. To that aim, the United States has also evacuated the military base in Doha, Qatar. just in Qatar, Doha in Qatar, has issued a formal statement asking quite clearly for those who are considered to be officials of the United States, Iran, or Qatar to take shelter in the country. So, an interesting series of situations developing regarding Iran. The president of the United States, up until this point, had issued what can be described at best as mixed signals. And this confused a lot of people out there in the wide world, and I'm going to level with you. I'm a little confused that some out there are acting as confused as they are. For those who have not visited this particular point in the Trump cycle, I would like to remind those of you out there yet again, the president of the United States approaching some kind of potential military operation starts suggesting that maybe he's going to back off. He orders the vice president of the United States, often, to suddenly suggest, oh, we're actually open to all of these diplomatic measures. I will remind you that right before the United States struck in Venezuela, the vice president made it sound as though he was going to give the leadership of Venezuela a quick out. Right before the Iranian strike in June of 2025, the vice president made it sound as though they were going to open a brand new line of negotiations. This does not appear to be any different. It doesn't. The president today announced, in what seemed like a sudden reversal, that he was trusting Al-Khamenei's statement from his government that they were stopping the killing of what is expected to be somewhere between 12,000 and 20,000 anti-Islamic regime protesters. Here was President Trump talking about that today, again, throwing a lot of individuals into a tizzy, suggesting maybe Trump was trusting Al-Khamenei.
Crazy so how do you trust them? You've seen that over the last few days, and they said people were shooting at them with guns, and they were shooting back. And it's one of those things. But they told me that there'll be no executions.
So Trump had said there will be no executions. Also, there were people doing some shooting. They were shooting back, and then the president
been notified and pretty strongly, but we'll find out what that all means. But we've been told that the killing in Iran is stopping.
So he suggests that, maybe it is kind of both sides. This always upsets a lot of people. Maybe there will be no executions. There will be no hangings. And then he suggests, and also, they've just stopped the killing. This was from the president today.
Stopping. And there's no plan for executions or executions. So I've been told that on good authority. We'll find out about it. I'm sure if it happens, we'll all be very upset.
Now, as one particular commenter, a Mark Raftis, pointed out, mixed signals from an administration could be because they don't necessarily want the enemy to see what a big attack looks like that could have a range of various unforeseen consequences. The president of the United States has made it clear previously that one of his biggest points of disdain for the Biden administration, for the Obama administration, and from some of the leaks in his first administration came from the leaking of U.S. military plans, whether it be, Joe Biden saying, in 72 hours, ice cream, we're going to strike the Houthis. And then the Houthis would all do this incredible thing called leaving, so that the United States Navy, when they finally fired in a couple of beautiful American cruise missiles, there were no longer any Houthis sticking around. The president of the United States doesn't like that. He also doesn't appreciate the number of leaks that have flooded out of the Pentagon, again, to tip off the enemies of the United States of America. And so he's obfuscated. And so far, it's worked. Now, there are individuals suggesting that, hey, now we know that the attacks aren't going to happen right now. They aren't going to happen today. Again, as I said in the introduction, Lisa Lacera over at Fox News was reporting, there's no attack for now. I would caution anyone out there who is giving you predictive timelines. I would caution against it. Why? These were the same individuals who suggested that when a particular United States Air Force B-1 bomber group left for a refueling operation at Pearl Harbor and then turned it around, that, we could time the previous Iranian strike that way. And it was a red herring. We're going to send the radio crew over to the commercial. We're going to continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, let's get into some of the additional updates that we do get. The funneling of the footage, as slow as it is out of Iran. So over in Kermanshah, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the right arm of the regime, is mowing down hundreds, thousands of civilian protesters over attempting to express their discontent, and then also some attempting to overthrow the mullah's regime. You can hear the automatic rifle fire in this particular footage. Again, it has been rather difficult to obtain specific footage from what is going on inside of Iran because the government has been seizing different communication devices entering the country, like the Starlink devices from Elon Musk's satellite internet company. They've paraded around the various satellite receiver dish Starlink boxes that have been attempted to be smuggled or shipped into the country. And they've also been jamming in some of the most interesting ways I think I've ever seen. So what we are essentially seeing in Iran right now is when I say multi-spectrum, obviously it's on the same electromagnetic spectrum. There is a multi-band jamming attempt on almost every available spectrum other than the visible light spectrum in Iran right now. They're trying very hard using what are assumed to be Russian jamming devices to jam on shortwave radio. They're attempting to jam on FM and AM radio. They're attempting to jam cell phone signals. They're attempting to jam satellite phone signal. And they're attempting to jam modem uplink signal to Starlink. The effect is varied. It's not necessarily going to be effective, at least as far as what I've seen long term, because as jamming attempts continue, it takes a lot of power. It appears right now that Iran doesn't necessarily have a ton of power to spare for high-powered jamming situations. Over in the United States, at least as a response so far, the libertarians are complaining, very, very angry, wanting to demolish or abolish the Department of War. That's a day ending in Y for that particular thing. So here in a moment, I want to get to some of the promises of the Iranian regime. First of all, we do have a fairly recent clip within the last 7 or 8 hours or so delivered out of Iran, which means we were able to get it out of Iran in a physical copy in the last couple of hours. People in Tehran chanting, "Long live the Shah." This would be the previous monarchy that was replaced by the Iranian Revolution. So that is another piece of news for you. Now, the radio crew has to come back in a second. It should be noted right now that the Senate voted 51-50 today to effectively block a resolution that would have prevented President Donald Trump from using military force in Venezuela without congressional approval. That's the vice president tiebreaker, flipping 2 of those Republican votes in the last couple of days. So it appears right now the president has at least a pretty open runway regarding the war powers resolutions flowing through the Senate. He pretty much has an open runway to carry out a series of strikes as long as he has seen or continues to see the success of previous military operations. All right, we have to bring the radio crew back from commercial just one more time here. And then we're going to get into some of these Iranian pleas. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Don't go anywhere. A lot of news.
Bum, 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 Iran. Bum, 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 Iran.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Very apropos bumper choice there. All right, so to the administration from Iran. So two interesting things right off the top of the bat. First of all, the foreign minister, and I'm going to try to pronounce his name, but it just might not be very good here. Abbas Araki, Abe Tamagotchi, sat down to an interview with Brett Baer of Fox News, and Brett gave him an open opportunity to essentially beg for mercy from the United States. A rather interesting decision. Here was that today, this afternoon, actually.
If you have a message for President Trump, who obviously is and has talked about and is considering some kind of action to help the protesters on the ground, if you have a message for him, what is the message?
My message is do not repeat the same mistake that you did in June.
That's a wild thing to say. That's a wild statement to make. Do not repeat the same mistake that you did in June. Do you mean when the United States introduced your nuclear facilities to bunker busters so that the first 46 people that you sent in to try to recover nuclear material died within about 3 hours of attempting to enter the facilities? 46 Iranians? Really? Don't repeat the same mistake you did in June? That's a scared man making that statement. I mean, look at this guy. The man's clinging to his chair as though Stephen Hawking is trying to deliver a lecture. I've never seen a foreign minister look this terrified.
You know, if you try a failed experience, you will get the same result. You know, in June, you destroyed the facilities, the machines, but the technology cannot be bombed.
Okay. So first of all, he's going to make the case that, you know, the technology can't be bombed, meaning what? Like the Iranians' memory, like how to, like they somehow made it out with Chip and Joanna Gaines' recipe book for building a nuclear device. They made it out. Yes. Guys, centrifuges are expensive. Enriching nuclear material is expensive. It requires a lot of space. There is no KitchenAid mixing attachment for doing this that I know of. And, you know, bad English aside, it would be a failed experiment to run twice, not experience. Failed experiences usually involve Taylor Swift concerts, but we'll let him continue.
And the determination also cannot be bombed. Now, Iran proved to be ready for negotiation, for diplomacy. We have proved that in the past 20 years, in 2015, in 2025, every time. But it was the U.S. who always escaped from diplomacy, who cut the diplomacy and opted for war. My message is, between war and diplomacy is a better way.
There you go. All right. As a dear friend of mine, Rob Carson over at Newsmax likes to say, don't catch the stupid. All right. You do not need to get on international television and say things that are so blisteringly untrue that they give the audience secondhand embarrassment. Of course you would prefer that the United States use diplomacy in this situation while you are massacring what could be the upwards of tens of thousands of your own civilians, continually trying to attain a nuclear weapon. For example, as we have seen from the Iranian foreign minister stating Iran has every right to pursue nuclear enrichment, stressing the program is intended just for peaceful purposes. When you say things that are so completely out of any reality, and then you get out there and suggest, well, we would prefer diplomacy, the Obama line of sitting there and not doing anything, as opposed to, you know, functionally working on taking down some of the things the international community, the United States, has condemned. Well, best of luck to him. As we found recently, there ain't no valley low enough for a B-2 bomber. So excellent stuff there. Really good. Enjoying it, in fact. Radio crew, we have to say, hey, for y'all for the evening, especially the Indiana crew, you have a State of the State address to listen to. I'm sure you're thrilled and excited. So we'll let y'all get to that. We're going to continue on the live stream as long as it takes. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Yeah, we're going to keep going on the live stream. I'm not stopping for any State of the State address, not when we have yet another piece of new information on other international affairs that need to be stated. Right now, the execution series that were planned of the 10,800 detained protesters in Iran. The first execution of Efron Soltani was supposed to take place today. Supposed to hang him in front of everybody. That did not take place. And Sky News is reporting now that all planned executions are canceled in Iran. Yeah, I think they're a little bit nervous there, Tom. I would pose a guess that right now the Iranian administration, that those being the Islamic dictatorship, are probably not interested in exacerbating the situation anymore. So that brings us over to other international news. The United States, the president of the United States, has suggested time and time again that the United States should have Greenland. He suggested it for Golden Dome purposes. Whether or not you think that the United States needs Greenland's permission to build additional military infrastructure, or whether you think it may be because of the mineral-rich resource, the resource-rich mineral deposits in Greenland, perhaps the threat of Russia and China. Here was the president of the United States today when a reporter essentially asked if Trump was going to send the troops in and march in. The putting of the words in mouths situation in the Oval Office. Here's how that played out today.
Mr. President, on NATO, right now it sounds like you are saying that you would potentially acquire Greenland by force. That would be a NATO country.
Are you saying that?
Are you saying that? Would you do that?
No, you're saying that.
Would you
I
acquire
didn't
that by
say it.
force
No,
right
you're
now?
telling me that that's what I'm going to do. You don't know what I'm going to do.
So what are the options?
Your
then?
network
Because
doesn't know either.
The Danish foreign minister said that there's still fundamental differences after the meeting with Rubio and with the vice president.
We'll talk about that. Foreign minister meeting the Danish and the Greenlandians coming to the United States, smoking a smooth Marlboro Red cigarette. I don't know what they were smoking, just, like to give them the benefit of the doubt. And then entering a meeting with Rubio, who, likely leaned forward in his chair and said very menacing things as only Marco Rubio can do. But we don't know that. So we'll let the reporter get her edge in. The president, of course, has said so far, I'm not telling you anything, and you don't know everything, which seems to be the mood he is in today. But alas.
Are you willing to leave the NATO alliance in order to get what you want with Greenland? What are the options right now?
Well, I wouldn't be telling you what I'm willing to do, certainly. I'm not going to give up options, but it's very important. Greenland's very important for the national security, including of Denmark. And the problem is not a thing that Denmark can do about it if Russia or China wants to occupy Greenland. But there's everything we can do. You found that out last week with Venezuela. There's everything we can do about things such as that. Not going to happen.
Now, before you get out your protesting sticks and park perpendicularly in your local highway, may I provide a little bit of arrested assurance here? The United States does have an avenue. Everything is for sale, as they say. There might be a situation in which the United States buys Greenland or doesn't. There might be a situation in which the United States issues an ultimatum of some sort to NATO. I have no idea. You have no idea. But there's a lot of pearl clutching that is going around over Greenland, as though this is Austria or Czechoslovakia, and Trump is going to, waltz in and take it for some evil permanent aim. No. According to the Danish intelligence report in 2025, Russia and China have extensive plans to operate in the Arctic Sea right off the coast of Greenland, a majority of its coast, in fact. And there are repeated instances of Russian and Chinese craft which have attempted to operate near the coasts of Greenland, especially closer to the Arctic Circle. So there is a national security threat that is presented. Now, as far as Chinese news is concerned, there are two key updates you likely haven't heard about today. But don't let the Iranian situation wash away something that is exceptionally important. First and foremost, two Chinese oil supertankers are on their way to pick up two Chinese oil supertankers, which were on their way to pick up Venezuelan oil, made just full-on U-turns and are now headed back to Asia. So the Chinese were planning on sending additional oil supertankers to Venezuela, like the Russians did. And now that the Trump administration has solved a huge portion of the burr in our South American saddle, the Chinese have decided it's really not worth it. Another report states that China has shut down a core section of its free Palestine, pro-Palestine bots, considering that particular foreign operation lost. So just another Beijing foreign operation going not particularly in the way that they had foreseen. But perhaps one of the most interesting pieces of news is, according to two different international financial publications here, China is seeking guarantees for the repayment of billions of dollars in loans which the Chinese extended to Maduro. That's freaking hilarious. That truly is gut-bustingly funny. Now, I do want to address one particular super chat over in the chat side of things. Judy throwing $2 in, very, very, very kind of you, suggesting that the reporter Tusi or Tausi had stated that the Iranians had sent jets off into the air, scrambled fighter jets. I have no idea whether that is true. The particular sources that I have in the region have not said anything in that way to me. But we'll keep an eye on that situation, any kind of confirmation. Again, the Iranians did suggest they were closing their airspace for 2 hours. Whether that was to launch some kind of a sortie of the last few remaining jets that they have that are not on fire, smoldering wrecks after the last U.S. operation. If the Iranians plan to hall monitor the airspace around and then land again because they have old Soviet-era rusting fuel tanks that can probably hold a Dixie cup's worth of AV gas, more power to them, I suppose. Not more air power necessarily. Also, a huge thank you to Patricia, as well as to Tuesday Statzler as well, for very kind $2 super chats. Again, you guys don't have to do that. I'm happy to report the news to you here for free. So let's get into a little bit more on that news side. We're going to talk about the updates, ICE surging another 1,000 agents into Minnesota. Of course, that brings us to Ilhan Omar, and Representative Nancy Mace will be joining us for that. Tons to cover tonight. We're keeping an eye on this Iranian situation developing. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Good evening. Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. It's very good to be with you this evening while we keep an eye on the situation developing in the Middle East. A United States request has reportedly been made to the UN Security Council that might take place on January the 15th. A potential last-minute meeting with the United Nations Security Council over Iran. Not confirmed at this point, just a report made via a TASS report. So we'll keep you appraised on that. The domestic side of things is continually focused on the fraud emanating from Minnesota, emanating from Washington State, potentially from New York, other areas of a potentially hotbed of Somali migrant activity. On that particular line, by the way, the State Department has now frozen all immigration from Somalia, and visas are essentially being canceled as we speak. No immigration from Somalia. People are being sent home. There is a piece of legislation entered into the House of Representatives that would allow the United States State Department to begin the process of denaturalizing U.S. citizens who had emigrated from places like Somalia that, well, if convicted of fraud, let's say, it would make it a lot easier to scrape away what you supposedly worked rather hard for. A very kind super chat from JRI Zoc, very, very kind $10, said, "I've been watching your program for a while now, have never donated until today. Like your humility. Here's a couple of dollars. Thanks, man, and keep it up." Really, really kind of you. Very much appreciated. Glad that you're here. Glad that you are tuning in. Let's continue on some of this ICE situation. Another 1,000 ICE agents, federal law enforcement, surging into Minnesota today. That brings the total to around 3,000. Here's that clip from today.
Trump officials are sending 1,000 more immigration officers to Minnesota. The Customs and Border Protection officers are joining 2,000 other officers and agents at the Department of Homeland Security who've been recently deployed to the Minneapolis region. CNN said that 2 federal law enforcement sources told them that around 1,000 additional U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents are expected to deploy to Minneapolis as tensions between federal law enforcement and local counterparts flare after an ICE-involved shooting last week that left a mother of 3 dead.
I appreciate the framing of the individual. I really don't believe right now, at least, just to be very frank with you, that the argument Democrats are hoping to make off of this, which is that we need to defund ICE because Renee Good was shot. I don't necessarily believe this is going to play out exactly how they're looking to do it. Here's Shri Tanadar of Michigan, of the fake wig and, well, I guess all wigs are fake, of the very bad used car salesman toupee and eyebrows persuasion, announcing he's going to abolish ICE with new sweeping legislation. Here's that clip.
ICE is beyond reform. ICE is totally out of control. And this week, I intend to introduce a bill to abolish ICE. We need to make ICE go away.
Okay, that's real special. I mean, that is some real special stuff. So the argument from the left is that if we really don't like something, and these law enforcement procedures aren't feeling it, well, we'll just get out there and we'll just abolish it because we really don't like ICE. Ilhan Omar, who we're going to talk about with Nancy Mace here in a second, made the same argument. Not necessarily a good one, but alas, here's Ilhan Omar on MS Now.
We want ICE out of our district. We want them out of our state. We want this terror to stop. The lives of people are being interrupted, and it is not justifiable for the president to target our state and the residents of the beautiful state of Minnesota this way.
Okay. Again, really special stuff. Heartening, one might say. But alas, right now, the congressional budget allotment has made ICE a federal law enforcement agency to uphold federal immigration law. You don't like that? You can, of course, go through and change the law going into 2026, into the midterms, and announcing the entire progressive caucus of the House of Representatives is going to hold everything up over defunding immigration customs enforcement. Do you not remember the key issues from the 2024 election that garnered tons of votes, tons upon tons? Apparently not. Here they go, making yet another exciting announcement.
And so today, I am glad to announce that the Congressional Progressive Caucus has adopted an official position to hold ICE accountable. Our caucus members will oppose all funding for immigration enforcement in any appropriation bills until meaningful reforms are enacted to end militarized policing practices.
Militarized policing practices. Okay. The argument that continues to be levied is that if someone wants to get in front of you and block traffic and obstruct ICE officers making an arrest on an illegal immigrant in the United States, and you want to get in there and obstruct, that's not illegal. That's not forceful. In fact, that's probably mostly peaceful. But I mean, if the law enforcement then treats you, according to federal law, as an obstruction to justice, that's militarization. I mean, if the ICE officer is carrying a paintball gun and you bum rush the man, and then he fires a paintball into your face, and you lose eyesight for a couple of hours, that's clearly militarization. Or actions do, in fact, have consequences. Now, again, I loathe playing clips of the ladies on The View to you here on the show because The View is essentially like receiving a colonoscopy. But, no pun intended, the Democrat Party split into its two demographics, angry young socialists and then menopausal liberal women. the view is kind of half the Democratic demographic at this point. And so Joy Behar today making the case that Donald Trump's ultimate master strategy is deporting illegal immigrants so they won't be able to vote.
I really worry about that Trump is looking for this kind of pandemonium to go on, like you just described, so that he can declare martial law or something, and also cancel the midterms.
Well, under martial law, you won't have elections.
Yeah.
Ah, yes. Step 1, deport the illegal immigrants. Step 2, declare martial law or something. Okay. Excellent. Exciting stuff. Wonderful. Now, there are a couple of questions from the rest of the country on the fraud allegations, because Ilhan Omar, representative of Minnesota, Tim Walz, several individuals who are officials in the Democrat apparatus at the state level and at the federal level, they have done some, they've been alleged to have done some rather shady things. So we're going to flip over to a great conversation. Representative Nancy Mace, who, may I say, subpoenaing Ilhan Omar so far, that seems to be more than most members of Congress have done. Joining us now is Representative Nancy Mace from the great state of South Carolina, who has a couple of spicy words for those who think they can just waltz away from billions of dollars in fraud. Representative, thanks for joining us.
I like that pun.
And expect for the next 11 months for me to ride you like you've never been ridden.
Well, let's get right to it. Representative Ilhan Omar allegedly involved from top to bottom. The situation in Minnesota, so say some of the documents that have come out, so say some of the reports that have gone to the Oversight Committee. And now the questions the American people have is, are we just going to get another angry letter, another hearing? What say you? You're in that committee side of things.
I know. I'm one of the ones who are deeply frustrated with the strongly worded letters, right, that do absolutely nothing. I'm frustrated by the lack of contempt charges, the lack of prosecutions, the lack of anyone going to jail for anything. And here we have a sitting member of Congress who's alleged to do some pretty egregious things. You have a governor in Minnesota, again, alleged to have done some pretty egregious things, and his attorney general. And so, when you look at this, nothing's happening. And look, I mean, you've got, 98 Somalians who've been, are being accused and indicted for fraud. I guess 98 people, 85 of those were Somalians in Minnesota. Right. And this thing's just, how is this thing run ramshod for a decade? Billions of dollars lost and defrauded of the American government. Like, they're saying the amount of fraud in this thing, and not just in Minnesota, but everywhere. And then you've got people implicated in it who are elected officials, and nobody ever goes to jail. And that's what's wrong with the system. It's just a complete failure of the justice system all the way through, federal, state, and local.
There's this difference between the idea of conspiracy to defraud the United States and obstructing justice, like Tim Walz is being questioned to have done. He knew about it, but he didn't do anything about it. And the idea of prosecutorial discretion, the two words that cover any sin for an executive. How do we kind of parse the difference here without him kind of squeaking out right at the end?
Well, he is squeaking out right at the end. I mean, that's literally what he's doing. And we as a federal government are allowing him to do that. Now, I really appreciated Secretary Scott Bessent's comments the other day.
Yes,
I've lost a lot of hope in the federal government, but I believe in Secretary Bessent. When he says he's going to do something, turn off funding, et cetera, go after someone for breaking the law, I really, truly do believe he's going to do that. And he's, I think, the last great hope that we have in this kind of scenario. He's a very serious guy. And Tim Walz and Ilhan Omar should be afraid of Scott Bessent.
So when we're talking about actually going after individuals from the Treasury Department perspective, this is how we've gone after a lot of America's great fraudsters and mobsters. Of course, I'm talking about Al Capone. And when I look at the situation in Minneapolis, when I look at the situation in Seattle, you have a mayor who says, we're just not going to address any of the fraud concerns out in Seattle. We're not going to address any of the fraud.
It's crazy.
I know. Same within New York City. Do you think the Treasury Department should be looking into the city of New York here in a couple of months with Sina Weaver and the Zoran Mamdani phenomenon?
Oh, 100%. I mean, there's so much fraud. I mean, they're talking 10% of the federal government is wrapped up in fraud waste and fraud and abuse, basically.
10% of the staff or 10% of the budget?
The budget, like with that budget. I mean, if you could just take that away financially, imagine how much we could get in tax returns every year for hardworking middle-class Americans. But, Benson's going to have his hands full. I mean, there's just so much of it, so much corruption, so much fraud. He could be busy for decades and still not get to the bottom of it.
So the last question I have here, again, with the Americans, again, I'm out here in Indiana. I'm used to sending a congressman, asking them to do something, seeing a whole lot of nothing happening on the floor of the House. Do you think there are any bills or measures that can be put through to start making some progress on this? I'm not asking for a permanent fix. You and I understand it's a marathon. Is there something we can do to start getting a little bit of ahead on dealing with this, to use the word systemically?
Well, we should codify I think so. I think so. And if we're able to, for example, we should codify refusing payments. Like if you're caught in this level of fraudulent abuse, payments should just cease. And you shouldn't be allowed to have an activist judge, a woke leftist judge, make decisions for Congress on the purse strings. Like, to me, what's happening, and we've allowed this to happen. We should term limit judges, for example. I think that is a small thing that can be done to limit the terms of judges so that you have some turnover, and that if someone is egregious, isn't following the Constitution, they're only there for a limited period of time. So I just think there's some things you can do. Small parts make a big difference.
I think that you're right. I don't like the whole just, quick fixes all the way through. I like that small stuff at the beginning. Yeah. Representative Nancy Mace, thank you so much for giving us a couple of minutes. Know you're busy. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. God bless.
All right. Welcome to a little bit of more information that we have on the Iranian situation. If you're just joining us right now, there are reports of various fighter jets over western Iran and eastern Iraq. We do not have any information beyond that on the nationality of those jets or where they have taken off from. The particular footage that has gone around that has been confirmed as a correct, real piece of footage from northern Iraq and eastern Iran shows what appears to be the glow of a single jet engine, a fighter jet perhaps. Here was that particular clip. Sorry, that was a particular protest we're going to show you in a second. Here you go. The the airspace closure that was issued for 2 hours by the Iranian regime has expired. Now, there doesn't appear to be a lot of individuals excited and quick to get back out on the air and, connect flights over Iranian airspace. Right now, again, all of the remaining warnings from different state departments and embassies around the world concerning Iran remain in place. No one has suggested things are calming down in Tehran, whereas a couple of days ago, again, we saw the massive numbers of protesters setting fire to things, chanting death to al-Khamenei. Massive crowds of people. Today, we have additional footage showing people in Tehran chanting "Long live the Shah," or the monarchy before the Iranian Revolution. Now, a couple of things here. Just of a bit of housekeeping, one might say. For those out there who have suggested that the timeline is greatly extended or that the administration is currently not sure what it's going to do, I would hazard a bit of caution. The reason I would hazard a bit of caution is, number one, as a Midwesterner, scoreboard. We've seen the administration do these kinds of things before. And number two, the president seems to be done with different countries around the secondary sphere, I would say. Perhaps not the primary Russian and China geopolitical adversaries of the United States, but their proxy states of Iran, of Venezuela, flouting the United States requirements or perhaps sanctions. And at this point, the president of the United States does appear to be carrying out his peace through strength foreign policy maneuvers. I don't know what that's going to look like. Taking out al-Khamenei is going to look a little bit different than the Fordo and the Isfahan nuclear site strikes. However, given that in Trump's first term they were able to take out Soleimani, I'd keep an eye out for President Trump tweeting or truthing out, as it were, some kind of American flag. Now, that aside, I do want to move over into a couple of updates that we have on some of the security alerts. For example, the United States Embassy in Jerusalem, not the one in Tehran, which is, shuttered, closed, all diplomatic relations between the United States and Iran reportedly cut off. The U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem has issued a security alert advising U.S. citizens should review travel plans in case of disruptions, making appropriate decisions for themselves and their families. So the Israelis, as well as what appear to be the Lebanese, are preparing for a rather spicy time. Now, the 12-day war following the United States strikes on Iran, or should I say surrounding them, did not turn into the Third World War that you were promised. And in the same way, in not appearing to be an Iraq or Afghanistan style war there of regime change, as it were, kind of a nebulous term, or in Venezuela as well. We'll have to keep an eye on those things, of course. But another key update, some of the European countries are sending troops to Greenland in a strong show of opposition to the United States. I mean, wow. Germany is sending 13 soldiers to Greenland. That's right. 13 soldiers being sent from Germany over to Greenland. Norway is sending 2 soldiers over to Greenland, and the United Kingdom is sending 1 officer. 1 officer to Greenland. So an exciting expeditionary force from Europe. Still not entirely certain they're going to land at Greenland. There are suspicions that they're going to try to land in Iceland and cause another Cod War. But, that's not necessarily known at this particular point. On to a couple of other updates that are from today's news that's just being wound up in a blistering dumpster fire of the international front. A hearing in the Senate today got a little out of hand when a trans activist, doctor, OBGYN, proposed expert, and Senator Josh Hawley got into it over whether or not men and, I suppose their pretending to be women counterparts could get pregnant. Always a good thing to see in any kind of a Senate committee hearing, but check it out.
Hey, folks.
Sorry. Here you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since you bring it up, why don't we just start there? Dr. Verma, I wasn't sure I understood your answer to Senator Moody a moment ago. Do you think that men can get pregnant?
I hesitated there because I wasn't sure where the conversation was going or what the goal was. I mean, I do take care of patients with different identities. I take care of many women. I take care of people with different identities. And so that's where I paused. I think, I wasn't sure where you were going with that.
Well, the goal is just the truth. So can men get pregnant?
Again, the reason I paused there is I'm not really sure what the goal of the question.
The goal is just to establish a biological reality. You just said a moment ago that science and evidence should control, not politics. Absolutely. So let's just test that proposition. Can men get pregnant?
I take care of people with many identities, but
can men get pregnant?
Many women that can get pregnant. I do take care of people that don't identify as women. That
can men get pregnant?
Again, as I'm saying.
All right. For the last time, maybe not for the last time, yet again, if you are going to be bold enough, if you are going to be arrogant enough, confident enough, cocky enough, or stupid enough to go testify before the House or the Senate, especially if it's not C-SPAN 3 or ESPN 8 The Ocho or Corncob TV covering your hearing, but C-SPAN 1 or Fox or CNN or the Tony Kinnett cast, and you're going to testify, perhaps you should know enough about your area of expertise to answer questions. This goes for the left and the right. Nothing is a bigger waste of time than being so arrogant that you think I can go in front of the Supreme Court and argue why men should play in women's sports. And then you're asked a very simple question by Samuel Alito, and you flicker in and out like a cheap Chinese LED light bulb in my porch lamp. Now, in this case, you are Dr. Verma. One would hope that you, doctor of OBGYN LGBTQ plus 2IA 8675309, Jenny, call my number, you would know whether or not men can be pregnant. A question which has plagued the scientific minds of this world for centuries, nay, millennia.
Let me just remind you what you testified to a moment ago. Science and evidence should control, not politics. So, can men get pregnant? You're a doctor, I think.
Science and evidence should guide medicine.
Do science and evidence tell us that men can get pregnant? Biological men, can they get pregnant?
I also think yes/no questions like this are a political tool. And
no.
I was a science teacher. I was an anatomy and physiology teacher. And dare I say, an award-winning biology teacher. And believe it or not, the cool thing about science is that you can get yes or no questions, or if it really is something that goes one way sometimes and one way the other, you can say this really cool thing called it depends. And then in science, you might be expected to say what it depends on. So for example, if you were to make the case, is an individual a male or female, and you really got down to the chromosome issue, where there are some individuals who are quote unquote intersex, a very, very, very small percentage of the population. And I was asked, well, men or women, is this person men? I would say, well, it depends. And the reason it depends is that it depends on how the individual who is intersex is presenting, because their hormones, their entire endocrine system in this intersex person, in this analogy that I'm, suggesting here, this example, this hypothetical, would tend towards male expression in hormones or female expression in hormones. So that's how you answer a difficult question. That's how you answer one of those. This is a professional. By the way, I love the idea that anyone dragged before Congress is not there for political reasons. Guys, everything is political. Everything is political. Political is just discussing how things relate to policies. Saying, I really don't like getting political. Great. Too bad. Everything's political. Don't be stupid. We'll let her continue. I want to hear her say this again.
Should control, not politics. So, can men get pregnant? You're a doctor, I think.
Science and evidence should guide medicine.
Do science and evidence tell us that men can get pregnant? Biological men, can they get pregnant?
I also think yes/no questions like this are a political tool. And
no, yes/no questions are about the truth, doctor. Let's not make a mockery of this proceeding. This is about science and evidence, and I'm asking you. The United States Supreme Court just heard arguments yesterday at great length on this question. This is not a hypothetical question. This is not theoretical. It affects real people in their real lives. And you
see the Supreme Court right now. This kind of stuff is being argued right now. We just had people on the show expressing very clearly that there are real laws, real executive orders right now in which the Department of Health and Human Services is making real decisions, real lawsuits. It matters since we don't have a common value system anymore. The definitions legally matter because there needs to be something objective. Ketanji Brown Jackson at the SCOTUS level believes that if you really don't like the Constitution, it shouldn't apply to you. If you really don't like a definition, it shouldn't apply to you. That's stupid. That's not how things work, and it's also incredibly dangerous. What Hawley is saying here makes a lot of sense because it is a common sense thing. You need definitions. You're in Congress. You're making laws. So therefore, having definitions are important.
You're here as an expert, called by the other side as an expert, and you've been telling us that you follow, right, you're a doctor, and you follow the science and the evidence. So I just want to know, based on the science, can men get pregnant? That's a yes or no question. It really is, I think.
I think you're trying to reduce the complexity of a lot.
I'm not. I'm trying to get, it's not complex. I'm trying to get to an answer, and I'm trying to test, frankly, your veracity as a medical professional and as a scientist. Can men get pregnant?
I think you're also conflating
male
with...
No, I'm not conflating male and female.
This goes on for another 2 minutes and 45 seconds, and it is just more of this. I'm going to let you in on a little bit of a secret here. And this is something that matters to me quite clearly. You could tell by the way that I asked questions to Nancy Mace. You can tell by how I asked questions to Wesley Hunt, how I ask questions to guests. I do not want futzing around. If I wanted futzing around, I would have done so myself. I'm quite good at it. But if I want specific answers that perhaps I could not provide, I'm going to ask you questions to get those answers. If you don't feel comfortable answering that question, you should see someone say, why can't you answer that question? If it's really that complex and Holly's pressing on you to give an answer to something that complex, then you say, hey, it's really complex and here's why. But the idea that someone is going to come in, yet another lady of the left coming in and go, I just don't think that we can really just boil it down. And I mean, when you think about it, really, I mean, this morning when I was, it's really not, it's political and I don't know. But then they want to turn around and be experts. You can't have it both ways. You truly can't. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot be super duper, listen to me, I'm the expert. Get in the academic job. I'm here. I know everything. And then simultaneously going, well, I mean, I am a doctor, but I don't really know. I am an Aquarius and Mercury is in Gatorade. So yeah, I'm really having a hard time figuring out why Americans landed on this as being an 80-20 issue. Really. I was a real thinker. So again, props to the left for running out the transgender book for 2026 for the midterms. And we're going to abolish ICE. Incredible. I mean, really, Stacey Abrams doing the same thing. Stacey Abrams, who you probably don't remember, who ran for governor of Georgia and then ran for another office and is stacking up defeats like Beto O'Rourke. People are suggesting that she's very, very important. Actually, she's the real governor of Georgia. So many people on the left were so obsessed with a woman who got spanked in an election that they made her the president of Earth for Star Trek for an episode. Well, she's back to tell you how you need to feel about federal law enforcement, not just ICE, any federal law enforcement. This isn't going to get people killed.
Let's be clear. The United States government now operates a masked paramilitary that is armed and believes it has the absolute right to operate with presumed absolute immunity.
Okay, a couple of things right off the bat. I'm going to take points off because you are using a standing microphone on a short desk. Not the right type of just for the shot, just saying. Number two, the lighting is bad because I can't see what the top book is. I don't care for that. So she has Southern Nation as one of the books. No Shortcuts, which is ironic because Stacey Abrams' entire career has been a shortcut. 4 Battlegrounds, which is about as exciting as a read as... I actually don't have a joke for how awful 4 Battlegrounds is. I've read it. It's awful. It's garbage. I can't figure out what the top book is. Okay, she's got that. So she's got the pictures offset to the side and the desk is not level on the camera. It's just a bad shot. So either she's a real podcaster now, which, everybody's got to do something. She's either a real podcaster and she is very, very bad at how the shot is supposed to look. Or simultaneously, she's pretending to be a podcaster for this little address that she's doing. You know how much I despise it when people do this. On the right or the left, I hate this. I'm in the media, so I do the media nonsense. If you want to do a media style press thing, hey, come on, we'll put you on the media. But faking the media, like we saw with Representative Eric Swalwell, when he was whining about ICE and he was doing his little hop, skip, and a jump. So he hands his staffer the phone and says, pretend to be a reporter. This thing.
Hey, Congressman. What's going on, man? What the fuck is up with ICE murdering a woman in Minneapolis?
He's doing like his slow walk. Hey, Congressman, I am a reporter. He's like, oh, what's up, man? And then they do the little... People don't like that. It's as phony as when your politician goes to the state fair and they're like, I'm eating an elephant ear. Stupid. Anyway, here's her point. The paramilitary. Yes, paramilitary groups. Okay.
And what's happening here is part of what happened with the kidnapping of Maduro in Venezuela.
In case you have forgotten while I was rambling, Stacey Abrams is beginning by talking about immigration customs enforcement and how she compares it to a paramilitary group that is hurting people in the United States. We'll let her continue this again here. I think it's worth, Venezuela is really quite different from ICE, but maybe there was a point I missed. We'll check it out.
Let's be clear. The United States government now operates a masked paramilitary that is armed and believes it has the absolute right to operate with presumed absolute immunity.
Taking points off for saying the word absolute twice in the same sentence. Find better adjectives.
And what's happening here is part of what happened with the kidnapping of Maduro in Venezuela.
Okay.
The killings of more than 100 people in the Caribbean.
What 100 people in the Caribbean? What were they doing, Stacey?
And the bombing of Nigeria, which we seem to have forgotten.
The bombing of Nigeria. The bombing of... Oh, you mean the missile strikes on ISIS camps to prevent the slaughter of Christians and moderate Muslims. Those strikes. That's just like ICE for you?
Because all of these are proof that lethal force is a legitimate means of repression by this administration, by this regime, by these leaders in America's name.
Okay, so if that was from a script, oh dear God. If it wasn't from a script, do better, Miss Podcaster. But in all seriousness, if you think that the military operates with hugs, inflatable bananas, a heart-shaped balloon, a nice smooch, what do you think they're sending their military troops to Greenland with from the UK and Norway and Germany? One might suggest that they can send them with a Hallmark card and a bucket of popcorn, maybe, a stuffed penguin to cuddle up with at night. Or perhaps militaries operating on the international stage. That's big boy world. This was someone running for the governor of Georgia. If you really want to attempt to get out there and make the case that what the country needs desperately, is a real leader who's going to act like an adult, and then you can get out there and be cowed by statements like that from the foreign minister from the Iranian Islamic regime who says, well, we would prefer diplomacy to military stuff. And then as soon as the United States chooses the diplomatic option, you continue doing whatever you want anyway, because the U.S. is going to do jack squat. Americans have wholly rejected that. Just like they have rejected the idea that individuals, like they did in 2020, can run roughshod over federal law enforcement. And just because some left-wing lady in her 50s looks at a cop and screams and laughs and says, I'm not moving, even though I'm clearly violating federal law, the idea that's some kind of an argument you're just supposed to put up with that and be okay with that forever? No, absolutely not. So when you see goofballs like this one who get out in front of the cops and obstruct justice, and then they get knocked on their butt, Americans are simply no longer in a state where we're clutching our pearls over it like a bad tweet from 10 years ago, back in 2016. So a comment from a friend of mine in the Department of Commerce. I wonder if Stacey Abrams' top book is smutty romance. I would not be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And now I desperately feel as though I need a shower. All right, a couple of updates on the Iranian situation, and then we'll get into a final couple of closeout points here. So right now, there is a report running from NBC suggesting that President Donald Trump, quote, has told his national security team that he would want any U.S. military action in Iran to deliver a swift and decisive blow to the regime and not spark a sustained war that dragged on for weeks or months. According to a U.S. official, two people familiar with the discussions and a person close to the White House said, if he does something, he wants it to be definitive. One of the people familiar with the discussion said, two things here that I believe are key. Number one, it is really funny to watch the legacy media grasping at straws because they have been cut off from access to the Pentagon to leak national security secrets that do put U.S. troops in danger. That's the first thing. Second, a big freaking duh. Yeah, obviously, the president of the United States doesn't want a longer drawn out war. He wants the United States to bring its full weight and force to bear on any military target and to cut off the head of the snake.
Oh, there's a big surprise. That's an incredible. I think I'm going to have a heart attack and die from that surprise.
Do you really need an outlet to share that deep information with you? I don't get me wrong. We're a lot of people in media outlets are sitting around. We're waiting to see if there is any kind of information regarding the strange updates in Iran. Again, flights that are being rerouted. Again, right now we're still hearing reports of jets over the western portion of the Iranian, border country. I would say the Iranian territory, but as of right now, it is, still contested by Kurdish forces, those being Iranian or Iraqi rebels. So a couple of things to keep an eye on there, but don't get so sad. Don't get so weak as a broadcaster or as a journalist that you start breaking the most obvious truths known to man as though they are big breaking news. That's kind of sad for NBC. Now, a little bit of mail time here, I think we can dig into, and we'll keep an eye on the situation as it goes. So, from Declan, very, very kind, €12 super chat, says, "Hey, Tony, watching from Ireland." Top of the morning to you. He says, "Our immigration is crazy. We're becoming Canada. A big fan of your reporting and commentary. Thank you very much. Please watch the new Nick Shirley video that just dropped, part 2 of Somali fraud." I am in the process of watching that. The Iranian stuff is taking a little bit of our attention at the moment. I have seen that he's supposedly found, and I say supposedly because I haven't watched it myself. I can't vouch for something I haven't seen, although I do like Nick Shirley. Supposedly he's found another business. He's being called Islamophobic a bunch, which is really funny. And we will absolutely take a look at that and share clips from that here on the show once I've had a chance to sit down and watch it. Some things I do want to watch first before I air them. This from Glenn Gardner, $5 super chat, very kind, said, quote, "They, as in the media, never seem to report that a mother of 3, Renee Good, was shot and killed after attempting to run over a husband and father in order to escape arrest." Yeah, absolutely. Very, very, very true. Interesting how that always seems to go one way. Also, as was noted, not by me first by any stretch of the imagination, I don't see any of the campus protests around the country on college campuses cheering for the Iranian protesters. Do you? Where's the, BDS, the divest, boycott, sanction movements against China for funding Iran? Oh, you don't see any of that? Well, I thought that we were concerned about, occupying forces mowing down civilians. I mean, then you have idiots like Candace Owens, who are out there today making the suggestion that there's no protests of any kind going on in Iran, and it's all a Jewish psyop, which, here's Candace.
So many people, oh my gosh, you won't believe what these radicals are doing. And of course, it just seems to be that whenever Bibi Netanyahu's around the corner, like, hey, I want that piece of land, suddenly our media starts telling us, hey, you wouldn't believe how free these people are trying to get in Iran. These people are really, we need to free the Iranians. Oh, they've been living in oppression.
So for those of you who can read more than 2 sentences at a time, that being our audience here on the Tony Kinnett cast, the collapse of the Iranian currency and the lack of import in materials to Iran, in part because of the United States actions in Venezuela, the rial has plummeted. It is now worth fewer fractions of a penny than it was worth yesterday. It turns out that when you can't buy food, you riot, as we've seen in lots of countries. Just a little cool thing there. As much as I would love to say that these protests started because people were fed up with the Islamic oppression in Iran, that's not the case. Now, that's what fueled and sustained it and became the core part of the protest, as we've seen from footage on the ground. But the idea that Netanyahu is over there going, oh man, I'm facing issues in my own country. I really want a piece of land, and so I will go country over, not connected to the piece of land, and I'm going to foment revolution, which I haven't been able to do before, but suddenly have gained the ability to do. That's Candace's argument, I think.
BB is over here like, ooh, land. Oh, no, really? It's about spreading democracy. Code word, that's military code word for dropping bombs and stealing.
Who out here is supporting the Iranian protests for just democracy? Who are these people? Show me them. Show them to my face. Who's out there going, I'm really interested in Iran because, democracy? No, I'm interested in the protests in Iran because I hate the mullahs. I hate radical Shia Islam. I really, really hate Shia Islam. And you know what? A good 2/3 of Sunnis, not a huge fan of the culture behind that either. So you're telling me that a state that openly boasts about killing United States of America citizens might be about to topple and turn back into Persia, which was once the gem of the Middle East? That I'm supposed to start saying, well, hang on a second, have we considered what their electoral college situation is going to look? No. In fact, there is a prince that is looking forward to going back and establishing some kind of constitutional monarchy. Maybe. Trying to take Candace seriously is I'll say this. I'll say this. Candace is a lot like taking dollar store NyQuil. It's a bad decision when you do it. There are better alternatives available. And you might end up going crack cocaine crazy and telling people God sent you a vision of Charlie Kirk actually telling you that the Egyptians flew planes to Utah while Erica was at a secret base with a Daily Wire reporter, totally unrelated to how much she hates the Daily Wire. And actually it was the French and not the Egyptians. Okay, no, wait, it was the Egyptians again. Excellent. Yeah, dollar store NyQuil. Little hot take there for you. So, ever heard of a whirling dervish? Oh, absolutely. A whirling dervish out of Whirl. The guy with the red hats, the dancers that used to get down on one leg and their leg would spin out. That was the whirling dervish, I believe. One of the comments put it. I believe you're talking to me about kind of Persian and Middle Eastern parts of culture there. One other question before we hop through things this evening. Really good question here too. From Melissa7196. Hey, Tony, any thoughts on the filibuster? Yes, I do. My thought on the filibuster is leave it alone. Leave it alone. Leave the filibuster alone. And the reason that I say leave the filibuster alone goes back to the 2013 clip from before Mitch McConnell went into just being difficult territory when he told Harry Reid about the nuclear option, be careful.
Say to my friends on the other side of the aisle, you'll regret this. And you may regret it a lot sooner than you think.
Okay. So, regarding the filibuster, there's a lot of tradition behind using the filibuster. It is meant to prevent a tyranny of the majority. Now, it's not in the U.S. Constitution, but it is something that was described explicitly in the arguments surrounding the beginning of our country, and it was needed a lot sooner than we had believed in the 1800s. So, as far as the filibuster is concerned, I recommend that we keep it. The reason I recommend that we keep it is that there are a lot of people who seem to believe in quick fixes. And there are individuals right now in the system who aren't doing their job. For example, Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate, they have jobs to do. They are not doing those jobs. And the idea is that if you just kind of cut the line of power and make it just a simple 51 majority on everything, then Republicans in the Senate are going to pass through all this legislation and it's going to fix everything right before the election and we'll never have to deal with those problems again. No, that is called a quick fix addiction. America has one as a culture. It is not how you govern a country. Eliminating barriers to tyranny of the majority is a bad idea because one day, someday down the line, there will be Democrats in power. And when the Democrats use the elimination of the filibuster to slap on 10 seats to the Supreme Court, it's over. Yes, it is. The filibuster currently exists to do one very fundamental thing, to keep the adding in of anything you want to be a state into the union, and number 2, to prevent adding Supreme Court justices in by the baker's dozen. For those 2 reasons alone, no on the filibuster. You say, but I really want that. And 60 votes is hard. Yeah, it's supposed to be hard. Republicans should want to go out and canvass and get every single person that they can, Scott Presler style, to flip enough seats to get 60 votes in the Senate. It's a very difficult thing to be. It's meant to be. Also, holding your congressmen and women in the House accountable in primaries. It sucks. It's difficult. It is, absolutely. But maintaining a republic is a lot more difficult. It is supposed to be difficult. It is worth doing. How many of you in the chat are precinct committeemen? How many of you in the chat know if all of your precinct committeemen in your particular district, wherever you are in your locality, are filled? There are a lot of unfilled positions. There are a lot of things that need to be done. And the idea that we can just kind of bypass a lot of rules because the time is short, and if we don't pass it now, we're all going to die, we might reach that point. I don't believe it's now. Now, feel free to disagree with me. I've heard some decent arguments for throwing away the filibuster. I think David Marcus over at Fox has one of the best arguments on it that I've heard. Would I lose my mind and cry big crocodile tears if the filibuster were to disappear? No. But you asked. That's my take on it. Now, again, you could find me extra dead wrong, of course. But alas, that's kind of my take on that. All right. There are, again, you saw a little bit of it. I have a clip of Mark Kelly whining about Greenland. And then, of course, the foreign minister from Greenland. I think we're going to leave that for another night. Rand Paul's also really, really mad about military things, but, you know, day's ending in Y. Reuters, a lot of other outlets are essentially suggesting that we're all just kind of waiting on our tippiest of toes in the edges of our chairs regarding the Iran situation. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take the opportunity to go grab some dinner, to get this show uploaded onto the radio side for other stations that are going to go live with this show here in just a bit. And then, after the podcast and the radio stuff is done, if Iran does get struck tonight, I will go live again. I don't know when that's going to be. Hopefully you don't. If you know when it's going to be, I mean, let a brother know. But, you know, that stuff aside, we'll go live again if Iran is struck by the United States and cover it. But until then, this is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Y'all, take care.